I was in the foyer when you called me. I wasn't the culprit in the mist when you caught me. I was setting fires when you saw me. I wasn't the culprit when you came back to haunt me.
BMW was founded in 1916, making aircraft engines for World War I, branching into motorcycles, then cars, initially with a licensed Austin 7 called the Dixie, which was a very basic British car design built to be cheap and affordable for the masses. From there, they began building sports and luxury cars until World War II.
After that war, BMW recovered slowly, restarting car production in 1952. But demand for expensive cars was low in the recovering German economy, and sales of the successfully licensed Italian-designed Setta microcar had very small profit margins, nearly bankrupting the company.
Which brings us to BMW's big turnaround with the introduction of the new class cars in 1962. Kicking off production of well-built, successful sports sedans, featuring four-wheel independent suspension and front disc brakes for all models. These cars turned the company's finances around within a year. The 3.0 CS, or E9 in BMW speak, is the second generation of these new class cars, enlarged to fit an inline six-cylinder engine and initially sold in 1968 with a 2.8-liter motor.
Our BMW 3.0 CS was bought from a collector in Southern California who did an incredible job restoring and upgrading the car. It has a rebuilt and upgraded engine bored out to 3.3 liters, a 5-speed transmission, and suspension upgrades. This car also has a beautifully restored body and interior, carried out by Avis Autosport in Glendale, California.
I'm Alex Haugland.
And I'm Amy Haugland.
And this is our 1973 BMW 3.0 CS.
Welcome to Everyday to Exotic.
So this car really helped define what BMWs would look like for about the next 30 years, up into the 1990s. A lot of the styling of this ended up being carried over in a lot of different models. So if you look, you have your typical kidney grille in the middle that has been on BMWs since before World War II. But it's set into this very short but very wide grille with 4 protruding headlights sticking out of it, all set into a nose that basically slants from the top back to where the bumper meets the car. That is really something that you start seeing on BMWs around this era, but it's something that really became iconic in the BMW design moving forward.
The lines on this car are very, very clean, very elegant. It has a lot of subtle details that make it look very put together and finished. One of those details is this chrome line that literally travels all the way from the front, all the way down the side. It integrates the door handle, so you don't have, that's not a separate piece. And then it just keeps going and going and going all the way to the back. The only interruption is the trunk lid. Another nice thing is that the car body itself tapers away from that line, both above and below. So you have beautiful chrome vents. They look like they're just set. They're just gorgeous. These vents are purely decorative. They do nothing, but they look really cool.
So this being an early car, we can also look at the bumpers here. These are the earlier style bumpers that you had on European cars. Unfortunately, in the US, we started getting these crazy regulations that required the car to be able to absorb a 5-mile-an-hour impact with little to no damage to the car. Those bumpers were these huge rubber blocks and things. They're just really not that attractive. They kind of ruined the pure elegance of the car. I love how the shape of the bumper echoes the point on the front of the grille almost perfectly. It's just an absolutely beautifully integrated design.
Other subtle things include the just barest lift on the top of the hood and that tiny crease that goes down and emphasizes the point. It elongates the car. It's really stunning, this car.
I mean, another very subtle body line is actually the top of the fender. We've got this crease, and at the top of this crease, it actually slopes down into the hood, which then rises up again. And so it sort of emphasizes again that sharp edge, and that sharp edge also runs along from the very front of the car, underneath the windows, all the way to the back by the trunk. So one of the things that I particularly love about BMWs of this era is the amazing amount of glass that you have in relation to metal. The greenhouse on these cars is incredible as far as visibility. You've got just very narrow A pillars, very narrow C pillar, and actually with the windows down, no B pillar at all. Both windows roll down independently, the front to the rear. They're electrically operated, but it leaves this just beautiful open space with no B pillar. It means that you can see absolutely everything everywhere. It would be horrible in a rollover. There's not much supporting that roof, which is why we don't have these nowadays, but at least you don't have pillars blocking your view of pedestrians and crosswalks and things along that line like you often do in modern cars. Other things I love on this side of the car, a very gorgeous chrome mirror. I absolutely love the design of it. I kind of wish I could put them on other cars. The other thing I love is the flap for the fuel just is perfectly smoothly integrated in the body. It just kind of carries the same line, and the shape at the back of the flap mimics the shape at the back of the car. It's just fine detail. The other thing is this BMW emblem on the side has a little vent built into it that it pretty much hides for the most part, but that allows it to balance the air pressure inside the car with outside the car. So if you have your heater on and it's blowing air, that extra air has to go somewhere and it comes out these vents.
The wheels on this car are aftermarket Alpina wheels. Alpina built high-performance, highly tuned versions of the BMW in this era. The one thing that doesn't seem to fit with the beautiful clean lines of the car are the side markers. They stick out. In Europe, the BMW 2002 had very smooth integrated side markers, but the American versions had more sticky outy ones, if I can use that term, for safety regulations. So that may be why these side markers are this way on this car. We don't know.
I don't know if there was a European version that had a flush side marker. If there was, I'd almost want to retrofit it. Another thing I love about this car is that it still has a lot of bright work. As you start getting a little bit later in the 70s, a lot of that starts going away. Some of it's because of US regulations that basically said you couldn't have things that could reflect sun into the driver's eyes. I love the chrome windshield wipers with the little wind deflector here to make sure that you keep enough pressure on the windscreen. This is what originally would have been on these cars. A lot of them get replaced with black wiper blades because they're cheap and readily available. The chrome ones are hard to find, but I'm so glad that this has its original wipers still.
So here we are in the back. The taillights are fantastic. Turn signal, brake light, reverse. They are flush to the body. They don't stick out at all. I love how the chrome outlining them makes them look like they're gemstones in a piece of jewelry. They just look like they're set.
You got what I'm looking for. You got everything that I want. My sugar and gold.
To get access to the trunk, you just push this nice little button right here. I love that solid noise. And you have this gorgeous, spacious trunk. How much wine can you fit in here? Lots. Enough for a very large party or to supply a restaurant for a few days.
So as we continue here, one of the other things in the trunk, you won't see a spare tire. It's under a cover down here, giving you a nice flat floor all the way through. The other thing you'll see is this, mounted on the inside of the trunk lid where it's out of the way in almost all circumstances, is the factory toolkit, which just comes down here with all of its original tools. Kind of every tool that you need to do anything on the roadside that you're logically going to want to do. You've got your spark plugs, you've got spare bulbs, you've got wrenches, spare fuses, including a nice BMW branded towel to wipe your hands afterwards before you get in your nice, beautiful interior. And then when you're done, all of it tucks up, screws back in place, and is there when you need it. Okay. Closes nicely, and off we go.
Give me some more. Give me some more of what you got.
So now we're going to move on to the mechanicals. First step of that is getting the hood open, which on this car is a little bit hard to find if you don't know where to look. As we get in here, there's a little knob that we have to twist to open up this compartment. And then inside there's a lever that you push down on and it releases the hood. Now that the hood's released, we can open it up and see the beautifully restored engine bay.
All that I can do is say,
So the engine originally was a 3-liter inline 6 carbureted. This engine's been significantly modified. It's up to 3.3 liters. The head has been ported and polished. There's an upgraded cam. In kind of every way, this engine's been upgraded to the higher performance fuel-injected car without the complexity of the fuel injection. Carburetors have also been changed. Originally, this would have been Solex carburetors. This now has Weber's on it. So it is a really nice, beautifully running motor. Fantastic work done on it. So in the engine bay, you've got your inline 6, pretty straightforward. You've got 2 carburetors, 2 downdraft, 2-barrel carburetors, so total of 4 barrels, underneath this massive air filter assembly. Ignition is over here with your distributor and your coil against that firewall. The ignition in this is also electronic. Coming from the engine, it goes through a 5-speed manual that's not original to this car. Originally, these cars would have either had a 4-speed transmission or would have had a 3-speed automatic. Brakes on this car are all disc. That came in with the 3.0 CSs. The earlier cars had discs on the front, drums on the rear, but this car was all disc brakes from new. Brakes are boosted. There's a nice big booster you can't really see, but it's down here. It has dual circuit brakes, as was required by this point in time, at least in the United States. The steering on this car is through a steering box rather than rack and pinion, but it's still a pretty precise setup. There's not a lot of slop in it. The suspension is fully independent, front and rear. With the suspension upgrades of this car, it's very stable. It's not as cushy as our Mercedes 280 SL, but it is definitely a much more sporty ride. It handles corners very well, does everything you kind of want it to do, but isn't overly harsh like a lot of modern BMWs tend to be. Other things that have been done in this car is that it actually has functional air conditioning that's been upgraded. Air conditioning was an option when these cars were new, but this one has been upgraded to much more modern compressor, better performance, and modern refrigerants. It makes it more environmentally friendly, and it also works very, very well, which is unusual, honestly, when you convert these from R12 to R134A. On this side of the firewall, you have a rain tray. You've got your wiper motor in here, but otherwise it basically catches any rain that may come through the vents and allows fresh air to get into the car. You've got your squirter line running here. That's sort of what this weird hose is here. You have a nice light here that would come on if my headlights were on with a switch. It'll switch here. Other things that you'll see is these little covers that allows you to get access to the back of the headlights. You've got 3 different little thumb screws here that you can unscrew and lift that cover off, and access the plugs to unplug and plug them in, or in the case of this, which has more modern bulbs, to change the bulbs themselves. In Europe, it would have also allowed you to change the bulbs. US, originally these cars only had sealed beam headlights. One of the signs of class on a lot of cars of this era is when they sound insulated the hood. This prevents heat and sound from really kind of coming out, makes the car a little bit more pleasant to be around when you're driving, and makes it feel a little bit more elegant and refined. This, of course, has been replaced. This is a more modern foam material, but it would have originally had a hood pad, even when new. So when you close the hood, you basically just have to push it down and set it back. You don't need to slam it or do anything. In order to actually latch this, you have to go back to that lever inside, pull the lever back, and it'll actually pull the hood the rest of the way down. As is, it won't go any further on its own.
Welcome to the interior. Alex and I love red interiors. We were lucky enough in that this interior was completely redone before we got the car, but it was taken back to factory original period correct specifications. Other than the steering wheel, this is an aftermarket steering wheel that is not necessarily period correct. The interior is leather and wood, which is incredibly elegant. The dashboard is padded, which is a safety feature as well as a luxury feature. While the chrome is still a fairly understated accent in the interior, it is everywhere, including on the seats. You can see it on the door handles here, of course, around the ashtrays. It's a border on the handle that you use to open the door. If they could make it shiny, they made it shiny. Following the beautiful chrome lines of this car, there's also that gorgeous wood piece that goes across the doors and then across the dash and then over on this side. It's polished, it adds to the elegance of the car, and makes it feel more luxurious. Also, the little dividers on this interesting dash tray are also wood. You know, you can put whatever you want in there and it won't slide around. Great place if, like me, you have a cell phone. That's really handy. As an excellent example of the elegance of the interior, there's all this decorative stitching, there's perforation. This is, of course, yet another ashtray. But note how pretty the chrome is on that. You know, it's these little details are really, really nice. And then you have this door pocket. I love the door pockets because they're almost spring-loaded. Yeah, that springs back. That'll hold any documents that you want very securely. Glove box is here. Push the button, push down. Nice, big, and roomy, but tucks way up out of the way. So as a passenger, I still have a huge amount of legroom. It's very, very spacious in here. Center console, air conditioning, which works. These little knobs, you know, adjust your air conditioning. This has an original radio in it. It was originally just an AM radio, but the internal electronics have been modified. So it now does AM, FM. It has a little USB connected to it, which adds to a more pleasurable, modern driving experience without changing the aesthetics at all. These are the window buttons, front and rear. I love how many of the knobs are labeled. Lighter, rear defroster. The gauges are very visible. All the lights at least have some kind of little indicator on them that tells you what has gone wrong when that light comes on. This car has a fully functional back seat. It's got this neat divider that folds down. Note, still no cup holders. That was not a thing in European cars of this era. It is very handy, however, for if you have two children in the back seat and you don't want them touching each other. Also, another ashtray, because who knows, you may need another ashtray if you don't want to use the ones in the doors.
Because maybe your children are smoking.
Another feature that comes standard from the factory and always has is this lever right here. Anecdotal evidence tells me that a lot of BMW owners don't know what that lever is for. You tip it up or down, it causes a little blinky light to come on in the back of your car to indicate which direction you would like to go so other drivers can stay out of your way.
Tongues and where we came from, said we are strong. I felt the wind in the trees above, chains around feet, but I could not breathe.
Here we are. It is a beautiful day in the neighborhood, as they say, on this lovely first day of spring in Oregon.
Right now we're driving alongside the Mackenzie River. It's absolutely gorgeous with the sun hitting it. Completely stunning. It's a beautiful drive, very nice road, just to the east of Eugene, really, so not too far out of town.
We are very lucky where we live. It is a great place to be a classic car owner.
Yes.
And a classic car driver.
I was too young, they could have grown up next to me then.
This car is fantastic. It is easy to drive. It has really precise steering. I love that the steering wheel isn't huge and isn't in my lap. I like how nice and easy the clutch is on this car. I like how easy it is to shift between gears. It does like to rev. It likes it when you change gears in the higher range. Makes it happy. You may notice that I am wearing a hat today, even though it is not a convertible car. The reason for this is not just fashion. It's also because a lot of the time with cars of all stripes, the windshield is tall enough that the visors, they do nothing for me to keep the sun out of my eyes.
That's a short person problem.
It's a short person problem. The seats are incredibly comfortable. They're very supportive. And for, you know, again, short people problems, I like being able to sit a little bit higher. But the visibility in this car is another thing I really, really like. This was an era before they were as concerned about you flipping your car over and it crushing you. So the B-pillars on this are a lot thinner than on modern cars, which means that I don't have a lot of blind spots. I can see everything.
It's one of the things I really love about BMWs in this era, honestly. It's the same thing with our BMW 2002, which is also a 1972, so kind of same era as this car, same era of production. And the visibility is amazing in all directions. The greenhouse is huge, it is very open, it is very light and airy in here.
Speaking of that, visibility, though, does come with a downside, which is that it lets all the sun in, and it can get pretty hot in here. Luckily, this car has fully functioning air conditioning, which is really, really happy, especially on a day like today. Looking down at the tachometer every so often is good. I am still learning about listening to the car, because a lot of the time you can tell when it's time to shift by the feel and the sound of the engine. And I'm still training my ear.
Well, and you haven't driven this car really much before, just a little bit before this.
As tradition dictates, or it seems to be the way that we're doing things for the most part. I mean, there have been cars and there will be cars on this channel that I drive a lot.
Yeah.
But this hasn't been one of them.
We haven't had this car that long, just over a year, I think.
Ah, well.
So, I mean, it's fairly new in the collection in many ways, but came just absolutely ready to go. And we almost immediately took it on a 1,000-mile tour, so...
Yeah. So it got, you know, pretty good shakedown.
It's proven that it is a really good, reliable car.
It really loves curves. So smooth and stable. It has very good braking. I feel very safe in this car. I feel like I can respond to emergencies quickly and easily. I feel like I can see stuff coming. I wouldn't worry too much about where I parked this. What else can I tell you about this car? I want to drive it more often.
All making change, I can look her in the face now.
One of the things I absolutely love about this car is how smoothly it accelerates. Straight six engines are absolutely fantastic for that. They tend to have great linear power, just almost turbine-like in how smooth they run. And the 5-speed gearbox in this really makes the car pretty drivable in all kinds of conditions. The clutch is really light, the steering's really responsive, the gas pedal's really responsive. Just seems absolutely like the perfect car to go touring in.
Waking up to the wonder, oh wild world away.
Get a little bit of revving. You can hear the transmission in the engine a fair amount in here, but it's not obtrusive. And when you're cruising, it's just really, really pleasant. With this suspension, it handles curves very nicely, nice and smooth. Brakes are great. They're boosted. So they're very responsive, very easy to control. That's exactly what you want it to do.
As you can see, this is also a very smooth ride for the passenger.
Yeah.
I'm knitting with no issues.
I mean, in a lot of ways, this is sort of the perfect long-distance driving touring car. It's really kind of an executive tourer in a lot of ways. Very nice, luxurious, comfortable, looks absolutely stunning. A really beautifully built machine.
Worth the price they were asking.
Absolutely.
That's something I noticed as well, is the build quality on this is really great. I don't hear like rattles or wondering what's loose.
You get a bit of wind noise, but even with the windows down, it's not too bad. You get some just because of the way that the windows are made. But if I roll down the windows here, the beautiful thing is it just gets completely open. And at the same time, you can still have a conversation driving down this road.
Absolutely.
It is a feature of cars of this era to have slow power windows.
But hey, in this era, the fact that there were power windows at all was, you know, that was pretty cool.
Nice, pleasant driving car.
Go out to the winery or go out for a weekend. Well, now we're back from our gorgeous drive through covered bridges and forest and logging trucks. And now it's time for the Haugland Score.
Here's how it works.
Alex and I have individually rated the car in 5 categories, each with a rank of 0 to 10. Then we add our scores together to give us the final Haugland Score.
After we combine our scores, the results go up on the board. So our first category is performance. For this, I gave the car a 7. You honestly could drive this car every day and things like that, but it's not a supercar. It's a really nice driving car, very comfortable, very practical, but it's not necessarily the top performing car in the collection.
And I gave it a 9, partially because I felt like everything I asked it to do, it did it smoothly. There was no, you know, jerking me around or anything like that. It was just a really nicely performing car. Our next category is style. I gave it an 8. It's understated, elegant, just gorgeous.
Entertainingly, I also gave it an 8 for pretty much the same reasons. It's just a beautiful car, very identifiable, fantastic lines, probably one of the nicest looking BMWs ever made. So after styling, we have drivability. This is where I think this car absolutely excels, and it's the first car I think I've given a 10 to for anything. I could literally drive this car every day as my only car. Not just as my only classic, but this is just such a usable car. You literally could hop in it, drive it every day. The trunk's big enough, there's plenty of room, it's very comfortable, you can go long distances, it's fast enough, it brakes well enough. In every way, this is really just an ideal car.
Wow. I gave it an 8. I could push it up to a 9, definitely, because this was one of those cars that it does everything, it's reliable. You can put 4 people in it if you move the front seats forward just a tiny bit. Yeah, okay, I'll push it up to a 9.
Okay.
So for significance, I gave it an 8. This car defined what BMW would look like going forward.
I gave it actually an 8 too, for much the same reason. This is really, for BMW, this is one of the most iconic cars because it really set the trend for what they're going to do for about the next 30 years. It also really sort of set the reputation for what they build. These fantastic, nice driver coupes especially, but also 4-door cars. The only reason it doesn't get higher is because in our collection we have other cars that I feel are personally more significant to us. For delight, I gave it a 7. It's kind of a hard one to necessarily categorize. In some ways, for a lot of people, okay, it's just another daily driver type of car, but it's a beautiful daily driver car. So it's more than your average, but it's not necessarily the, oh my God, I'm gonna now follow you around to find out exactly what you're driving. So.
And I gave it a 9. I was pretty generous, but at the same time, I loved driving this car. Everybody that we met loved it too.
This knock plow?
Yes.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
So I felt like there were a lot of, oh hey, that's awesome, that's gorgeous. We got a lot of gorgeous car when we were out driving.
So for our 1972 BMW 3.0 CS, that gives us a grand total score of 83. That puts it in first place, beating out the Alfa Romeo Montreal.
By 4 whole points even.
For this, we've dethroned the Montreal, which from our very first episode basically has dominated the top of the list. A lot of that I think had to do with sort of how we're scoring it as we're getting this started, but at the same time, the Montreal is also a fantastic car.
It's very fitting that this should happen on our 10th episode. You know, when we did the Montreal, and that was our very first episode, you know, and I was still really, you know, I was very generous with the Montreal.
Oh, yes.
But
Yes,
it was very, you know, we were still finding our feet. And to kind of go, but this one, now that I have 10 episodes worth of experience, scored higher.
This is a better car.
Yes.
Yeah.
From our point of view, this is a better car.
A comment that one of us made after we got back and we were talking about the car was that this is everything a car should be.
So it makes full sense that it got the score that it got.
Absolutely. 10 episodes! That feels so cool.
So, a little bit of background. When we originally planned this project, the plan was to do about 10 episodes and see how it went.
Marker.
We're glad you're here for this episode of
Everyday to Exotic.
At this point, we really need your feedback. Should we keep doing this? Should we change things? So please, share your opinions, pass it on to people that you think would like it, like and subscribe yourself. Everything along that line really makes a difference to keeping this going.
Let YouTube know that you want to see more of this.
This is not a cheap and easy program for us to put together. We love doing it, but at the same time, we want to make sure that it's what you want to see as well. Thank you so much for helping us get to this point.
See you on the next video. Bye!
Train mushroom.